Today at 3 o'clock at St. Paul's Cathedral in Oakland, Bishop Zubik will be having a special Mass for manifesting the Kingdom Awards. And a recipient from each parish and institution in our diocese. Here at St. Joseph, Rita Feeney is the recipient in 2011 from our parish. She's our sacristan, and she brings a lot of goodness and light to our community, and we congratulate Rita for winning the award today at St. Paul's Cathedral. Today marks the kickoff of Catholic Schools Week, and a student from our school has spoken at each Mass. We thank Olivia Babiock, our 6th grader, for speaking at the 12 noon Mass. The theme this year for Catholic schools is A+ for America, Catholic schools. And there's an insert in the bulletin of top 10 reasons to choose Catholic schools by Faustin Weber, a longtime teacher, principal, president of Catholic schools, and a parent of 4 children. And he lists academics, positive effect on minorities, the principle of subsidiarity, combating religious amnesia, Catholic religious identity, understanding our intellectual tradition, service to others, credible Christian role models, development of Catholic worldview, and an integrated family life. I would ask that you would take a bulletin and reflect upon these beautiful gifts. Our parish here at St. Joseph has been in existence for 120 years, and for 58 years we've opened the doors of our school to train and to form and shape minds and hearts and wills to be disciples of the Lord. And we hope, looking into the future, that we will continue to be able to equip next generations to tackle the challenges and the problems of our world and our society. And by your faith commitment and by your example, I hope and pray that our school will become a great advocate of the Beatitudes and the Christian way of life. Also in the bulletin this week is a tribute to a dear friend of mine, Father Nick Pasenka, who passed away, whose funeral was at Resurrection Church on Wednesday. Here in the sanctuary is a plaque of a tribute to him with a candle burning. In thanksgiving for his vocation as a priest and his witness, he taught me the importance of going to the Catholic school and teaching the faith to generations of young people so that their faith may always be the staple and foundation of their lives. And in the bulletin is a tribute, an acknowledgement of my friend in thanksgiving for his witness and his example as God called him home. In today's first reading, we hear from a 7th century prophet, a minor prophet, Zephaniah. He's a fiery and passionate preacher, a prophet who preached the warning of the coming day of the Lord. His description is one of final judgment. And he says that God protects us and God treasures us and God expects us to be faithful to his covenant. He says there will be a day of retribution and a day of judgment. And those who will survive are the remnant, the lowly, the humble, the just, the obedient, the faithful, the truthful ones. In the sea of humanity, that special portion, that small remnant. Others may go their own ways, but the remnant seek the will and the way of God to bring God's presence of justice and goodness, integrity, truthfulness, and grace to others. Paul, in his letter to the Corinthian community, reminds us that our only boast should be in the Lord. And the Lord chooses the lonely and the despised and the weak to thwart the wisdom of the world. And he says that Jesus is the wisdom. He's our sanctification and he's our salvation. And if any good comes from us, it's by his grace and by his love for us. It's not of our own making or our own creation, of our own doing. And he says we should only boast of what God is doing in our lives, what God is doing in our family, what God is doing in our marriage, what God is doing in our community, what God is doing in our nation, what God is doing in the world. How is God acting? And Paul says, what marvelous things God does for us. Let us open our eyes and open our hearts to see them. In the gospel today, we hear the Magna Carta of all the New Testament, Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. He gives his disciples the ultimate game plan, the recipe for the coming of the kingdom of God. And he takes this intimate moment to draw his disciples to the heights of a mountain, and he sits down with them as a Jewish rabbi, and he meticulously, in a repetitive way, says, blessed, how fortunate are the humble, those who are poor in spirit, the meek, the peacemakers, those who hunger for justice and truth. And the litany of these 8 Beatitudes must have been revolutionary for a first century Palestine. It even is revolutionary to a 21st century Americans. They're countercultural. They're against the current of the tide. They're not in sync with this culture, the society in which we live in. Jesus said, this is what I value. This is what is important to my will. This is what will enact my life to others. Hear them, heed them, and share them. The Beatitudes. In the Catholic Catechism of the 4 pillars of our Catholic faith, the 4th pillar is prayer. And in the prayer section of the Catholic Catechism, it takes the Lord's Prayer, the model prayer, the Christian prayer, and it takes the 8 Beatitudes as the hallmark. Pope Benedict XVI says, you can't share Jesus with others until you know the Beatitudes, in his Jesus of Nazareth book. But in the Catholic Catechism, this is what it says of the Beatitudes. And I quote it directly, 2608. From the Sermon on the Mount onwards, Jesus insists on conversion of hearts, reconciliation with one's brother or sister before presenting an offering on the altar, love of enemies, and prayer for persecutors. Prayer to the Father in secret, not heaping and empty phrases, prayerful forgiveness from the depths of our hearts, purity of heart, and seeking the kingdom before all else. This filial conversion is entirely directed to the Father. The Beatitudes are transformative. The Beatitudes are not abstract. They're not unreachable, untouchable for any of us. They're within our means. They're within our grasp. They're within us. Those who seek the Lord. True humility, friends, and poverty of spirit isn't putting ourselves down. It isn't denying our own abilities or competencies or skills or abilities. Humility is not allowing others to trample on us. True humility is an awareness of my limitations and my gifts. True humility is giving credit to God and not credit myself. True humility is grounded in the reality that there's good and bad in me. There's strengths and weaknesses in me. There's virtues and vices in me. There's saint-like qualities and there's real sin in me. There's artificiality in me and there's authenticity in me. Humility is the ability to accept all of us in our imperfection. We're loved and we're forgiven. And God sees us as His image and His likeness to bless and to grace others even in our woundedness and imperfectness. In this week's Sports Illustrated magazine, Men of Steel. Now, if you're in Pittsburgh, you get the defensive end, James Harrison. If you're in Green Bay, then you get Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. There's a 10-page wonderful article about a town 10 miles from here called Aliquippa in Beaver County. It's a wonderful article entitled, "The Heart of Football Beats in Aliquippa." Subtitle, "Over 5 decades of economic decline and racial conflicts, a western Pennsylvania mill town has found unity and hope on the football field." And it takes players who have come from this town, some of which are in the Hall of Fame. Mike Ditka's mother, 89, who still lives there. And her son, Mike Ditka, says, "In tough times, it makes tough people." And in that town of economic decline, of drugs, of gangs, of war, of warring racials, factions, they talk about the light of believing. They talk about the unity, and they talk about coming back and giving back to that community that was so foundation. And it's so beautiful that even in the darkness that enveloped the closing of all the mills and all the changes in the culture, there's something that they can hold on to, and that's the faith. And he said that hasn't gone away. Maybe Aliquippa can teach us something. In all of our lives, we can be at the top of the ladder, or we can fall and be at the bottom of the ladder. Sometimes in our personal life, we can have it all together and have the zenith, and then all of a sudden, something can change so suddenly, and we're all the way down, and life feels so defeating. Jesus is the one who wants us to scale the mountain of the spiritual life. He's our strength. And we can't make it without His grace to live the Beatitudes. And when we treat people justly and we treat them fairly, when we forgive them from the depths of our spirit, even when they've done things that hurt us for even long times, it is asking God's grace to heal, to set free, and to bring His love to where there's darkness. We're all on a journey, friends. Jesus' disciples, He gave a map. He gave a plan. For over 2,000 years, it's worked well. But the people who move the world are the people who are at peace with themselves. The people who conquer life are the people who allow Christ to master them. And as I mourn my friend, Father Nick, I thank God for the peace in his passing, that the Lord comforts those who mourn and who are sorrowful. These Beatitudes are like water from an ocean that flow over us with God's grace and make things all new again. But none of us master the Beatitudes in a year or even decades. It takes a lifetime, and even beyond a lifetime. to grasp the Beatitudes. That who's going to make all the wrongs of our lives right but Jesus? Who's going to make all the hurts and the pains and the sufferings and the sorrows that we carry but Jesus? Who's going to bring light when there's insurmountable darkness and bad news in our daily lives but Jesus? And who's going to be our teacher when the scenes of life and the places of life and the changes of life happen to us but Jesus? Mother Teresa of Calcutta said, you don't know that Jesus is all you need until Jesus is all you have. The Beatitudes call us to be true disciples of Jesus Christ, so that we have the mind and the heart, the will, because we have bearings that are not of earth, but we surrender to God's will and to live according to His teaching. And then we will manifest to others the kingdom of heaven. One day, the fulfillment of all the Beatitudes is the beatific vision, to see Jesus face to face in glory. That perfect day, that perfect beauty, that perfect love. Help us each day, Lord, to manifest more fully your game plan. They are the keys to happiness. They are the keys to the kingdom. Thanks for sharing them with us, Lord. And help us to learn them each day. And in learning them, to share them with others. Let us stand to profess our faith.